The giant metal doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a loud crash that echoed through the massive room. Commander Jiwan stepped inside, her black uniform clean and pressed, but her hands were shaking slightly. She had never seen so many different alien species in one place before. The chamber was huge, bigger than any building on Earth. Floating platforms held representatives from 12 different worlds. Some looked like giant insects with sharp claws and glowing eyes. Others were soft and glowing like jellyfish floating in the air. The smell was strange too, like metal and flowers mixed together. Jiwan walked to the human section in the center of the room. Her team followed behind her. Captain Minho was tall and serious, his face showing no emotion. Young diplomat Sora looked nervous, her eyes moving around the room quickly. Admiral Kyung was old and experienced, but even he seemed worried today. The Valkyrie ambassador stood up from his platform. He was 8 feet tall, with 6 arms and skin that looked like Blackwell. His voice was like grinding stones when he spoke. "We are here today to decide what to do about the humans," he said, pointing one of his clawed fingers at Jiwan. "They have spread across our galaxy like a disease. In 50 years, they have taken over 20 star systems. They build weapons and ships faster than any species we have ever seen." Murmurs filled the chamber. Some aliens nodded their heads in agreement. Others made strange clicking sounds. That might have been disagreement. Jiwan felt her heart beating fast, but she kept her face calm. The Nethros representative floated forward. Its body was like a transparent balloon filled with sparkling lights. When it spoke, its voice sounded like singing. "The humans have done amazing things," it said. "They have cured diseases that killed millions of our people. They have shared their technology freely with species that needed help. They saved my homeworld from the asteroid storm last year." "Wait," said another voice. A red-skinned alien with 4 eyes stepped forward. "I am Zek from the Marthos Empire. The humans are dangerous because they do not follow the old ways. They make friends with species that have been enemies for thousands of years. They change everything they touch." Jiwan stood up slowly. All eyes in the chamber turned to her. She cleared her throat and began to speak. "We did not ask to be here," she said. "My people were just trying to survive on one small planet when we reached the stars. We found a galaxy full of wonderful species. We wanted to be friends. We wanted to learn. We wanted to help, but you multiplied too fast," shouted the Valkyrie ambassador. "In 50 years, your population has grown from 8 billion to 20 billion. You build colony ships like toys. You will consume everything that is because we work together," Jiwan replied. "When the Zephyrian plague threatened to kill millions, we worked day and night to find a cure. When the Valkyrie mining station was attacked by pirates, our ships came to help. We do not see different species. We see neighbors." Captain Minho received a message on his communication device. His face went pale. He whispered something to Jiwan. Her eyes widened with worry. "What news do you bring?" asked the council elder, an ancient being that looked like a tree with glowing bark. Jiwan looked around the chamber before speaking. 3 Valkyrie battle fleets have been detected moving toward human colonies in the outer rim. They will arrive in 2 days. The chamber exploded with noise. Some aliens shouted in anger. Others made sounds of fear. The Valkyrie ambassador hit his platform with his fist. "Those fleets are for protection," he said. "The humans are spreading too fast. They must be contained before they take over the entire galaxy." "You mean before they show other species that there is a better way," said the Nethros. Its lights flickered brighter. "You fear that other species will see human kindness and want the same thing." Sora stood up and activated a holographic display. The image showed human soldiers helping alien children escape from a burning building. Another image showed human doctors treating wounded Valkyrie warriors. Another showed human engineers fixing a damaged Nethros city. "These are the real humans," she said. "We fight when we must. We help when we can. We do not conquer, we protect." But the Marthos representative pointed at different images. These showed human factories producing thousands of ships, human cities growing across alien worlds, human trade routes connecting distant stars. "Look how fast they expand," he said. "In 1 generation they have changed everything. No species has ever grown this quickly. It is not natural because we do not fight each other anymore," said Admiral Kyung, speaking for the first time, his voice strong and clear. "When species work together instead of fighting, they can do incredible things. We learned this the hard way after almost destroying our own planet." The Valkyrie ambassador made a harsh laughing sound. "You want us to believe that humans are peaceful, but your history shows thousands of years of war. Your planet was covered in weapons when we first found you. That is exactly why we understand peace so well now, replied Jiwan. We know the cost of war. We have seen what happens when people fight each other. Instead of working together, we do not want that for anyone, eh? New voice spoke from the back of the chamber. It was small and high-pitched like a child, the speaker was. A tiny blue creature with large eyes. The humans saved my family, it said. When our transport ship broke down in deep space, human ships came to rescue us. They gave us food and medicine. They fixed our ship. They asked for nothing in return. More voices began speaking from around the chamber, stories of human kindness, human doctors, human teachers, human engineers who had helped alien species. Some stories were small, like sharing food or fixing broken equipment. Others were big, like stopping wars or curing diseases, but the Volcari ambassador would not listen to these stories. He raised all 6 of his arms for silence. Pretty words and small kindnesses do not change facts, he shouted. The humans reproduce too fast, they explore too quickly, they change too much. They must be stopped before they destroy the balance of our galaxy. The chamber fell silent. Everyone was looking at Juan. She stood up again, her legs feeling weak, but her voice staying strong. We came to the stars looking for friends. She said, we found species that had amazing knowledge and beautiful cultures. We learned from all of you. We shared what we had with all of you. If wanting to help others makes us dangerous, then we are guilty, but we will not apologize for caring. About life, the council elder raised one of its branch-like arms. The vote will be held tomorrow, it said. All species will decide. Does humanity deserve a place in our galaxy, or must they be contained for the safety of Alice? The session ended. Aliens began leaving the chamber in small groups. Some looked at the humans with curiosity, others with fear. A few with what might have been hope. Minho came close to Jiwan and spoke quietly. The battle fleets are moving faster than we thought they will. Be at our colonies in 30 hours. Jiwan nodded. We need to get word to Earth Admiral. Prepare our defenses. Sora, keep trying to build alliances with the moderate species. Every voice might count tomorrow. As they walked toward the exit, Jiwan looked back at the empty chamber. Tomorrow, her species would learn their fate. Would the galaxy accept humans as partners or see them as a threat that needed to be destroyed? Either way, humanity would face that future together, as they had always done, with courage and hope. The stars outside the station windows seemed brighter tonight. Each one might hold friends or enemies. The only certainty was that everything would change very soon. Dr. Hannah floated in her research pod high above the dead planet Cathara. The world below was gray and lifeless, covered in ancient ruins that had been empty for thousands of years. But today she had found something that would change everything. Her scanner beeped loudly as it detected metal structures deep underground. She guided her small ship down through the thin atmosphere and landed near a massive stone pyramid. The symbols carved into its walls looked familiar, but she could not remember where she had seen them before. Meanwhile, far away on the border planet Nexus 7, Sergeant Day was leading his squad through a refugee camp. The place was crowded with aliens from many different species. All of them were running from the fighting that was spreading across the galaxy. The camp was not safe anymore. Valkyrie ships had been spotted near the planet, and everyone knew they would attack soon. Most of the refugees were families with children. They had nowhere else to go. Look, Sergeant, said Private Bong, pointing at the sky. Dark shapes were moving between the stars, growing bigger every minute. The Valkyrie fleet had arrived much sooner than expected. Get everyone to the underground shelters. Day ordered his soldiers. We need to move fast. The camp erupted in panic. Alien families grabbed their few belongings and ran toward the concrete bunkers that had been built for emergencies. Children were crying in languages Day did not understand, but fear sounded the same in every voice back. On the dead planet, Dr. Hannah had found an entrance to the underground chambers. Her flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing walls covered in strange writing and pictures. The air smelled old and dusty, like a tomb that had been sealed for centuries. She walked deeper into the tunnels until she reached a massive chamber filled with stone tablets. Each tablet was covered in symbols and pictures that told a story. As she began to translate the ancient text, her hands started shaking. The tablets told the history of a species called the Terrans. They looked exactly like humans in the pictures, but according to the dates, these Terrans had lived in this galaxy 3,000 years ago. They had been warriors, but also healers, explorers, but also Protectors on Nexus 7, the first Valkyrie bombs began falling on the refugee camp. The explosions shook the ground and filled the air with smoke and dust. Day and his soldiers were helping alien families reach safety when they heard screaming. From the medical tent, a Valkyrie dropship had landed right in the middle of the camp. Armed soldiers in black armor were advancing on the tent where wounded refugees were being treated. The aliens inside could not move fast enough to escape without. Thinking, Day and his squad ran toward the medical tent. They threw themselves between the Valkyrie soldiers and the helpless refugees. Bullets flew in all directions, but the human soldiers did not retreat. Private Yeon was hit in the shoulder, but kept firing her weapon. Corporal Jun used his own body to shield an elderly Nethros who was too weak to walk. The alien looked up at him with glowing eyes full of gratitude. The fighting was brutal and close. The Valkyrie soldiers were bigger and stronger, but the humans fought with desperate courage. They knew that if they failed, innocent lives would be lost. Arhana kept reading the ancient tablets and learned something incredible. The Terrans had not died out in some great war. They had been exiled from the galaxy by the other species, but not because they were too violent, because they were too kind. The tablets explained that the Terrans would risk everything to save others, even their enemies. They had nearly destroyed themselves trying to protect every living thing in the galaxy. The other species had feared this would lead to chaos, so they had forced the Terrans to leave, but some Terrans had escaped to a small world on the edge of the galaxy, a world they called Earth. The tablets showed star maps that matched perfectly with human space. The truth was clear: humans were the descendants of the ancient Terrans on Earth. Intelligence officer Nari was working late in her office trying to understand why the Valkyrie had attacked so quickly. Her computers were analyzing intercepted enemy communications, looking for patterns and clues. What she found made her blood run cold. The attack on Nexus 7 was not random. It was part of a plan to make humans look like aggressors. The Valkyrie had filmed their soldiers attacking the refugee camp, but they had edited the footage to make it look like humans had attacked first. The fake videos were already spreading across the galactic network. News reports showed human soldiers shooting at Valkyrie forces, but they did not show the refugees being protected or the medical tent being attacked. The truth was being twisted into lies. Nari tried to send messages to the Galactic Council, but found that her communications were being blocked. Someone with powerful technology was stopping her from revealing the truth. The conspiracy was bigger than just the Valkyrie military in the orbital shipyards above Earth. Young engineer Tay was working around the clock to prepare humanity defenses. His team was installing defensive systems on civilian ships, turning cargo haulers and passenger liners into makeshift warships. The work was dangerous and exhausting, but no one complained. They all knew that these ships might be the only thing standing between Earth and destruction. Every bolt they tightened, every wire they connected could save lives. Sister Rin was working in a different part of the shipyard. Her job was to study captured Valkyrie technology and find weaknesses that human forces could exploit. She had always been good with alien languages, and now that skill might save her species. Late at night, Rin received a secret message from a Valkyrie scientist who was opposed to the war. The message contained technical specifications for Valkyrie ship shields. The alien scientist was risking his life to help humans because he believed the war was wrong. Back on Nexus 7, the battle for the refugee camp was ending. Sergeant Day and his squad had fought off the Valkyrie attack, but the cost had been high. 3 of his soldiers were dead and 5 more were badly wounded. As medical teams treated the injured, human and alien civilians worked together to put out fires and rescue people trapped and damaged buildings. A young Valkyrie child who had been separated from her family was found crying under a collapsed tent. Instead of treating her as an enemy, the human soldiers gave her food and medical care. They contacted her family and arranged for her safe return. When her parents arrived, they could not believe that humans had protected their daughter. The scene was recorded by news cameras from several species. The footage showed human soldiers bleeding from their wounds while they carried alien children to safety. It showed human medics treating Valkyrie civilians with the same care they gave their own people. Dr. Hannah finally finished translating all the ancient tablets. She now understood the full truth about humanity, origins, and the real reason for the current conflict. The knowledge was dangerous, but it might also be the key to saving her species. prepared to send her discoveries to the Galactic Council. But first, she recorded a message for her friend Commander Jawan. The truth about the Terrans would shock the galaxy, but it might also explain why humans behave so differently from other species. As she transmitted her data, Dr. Hana looked out at the dead planet below. 3,000 years ago, this world had been home to beings who looked like humans, who acted like humans, who cared like humans. Now their descendants faced the same choice that had led to the original exile. Would the galaxy accept humans for who they truly were, or would history repeat itself? The answer would determine not just humanity's future, but the fate of every species in the galaxy. The ancient Terrans had been forced to leave, but their children had grown strong in exile. Now it was time to see if the galaxy was ready for their return. Captain Jinho watched the enemy ships appear from hyperspace like deadly flowers blooming in the darkness. His small fleet was outnumbered 10-1, but he had faced worse odds before. The Valkyrie dreadnoughts were massive, their hulls bristling with weapons that could crack planet's enemy fleet. Detected his communications officer reported 27 heavy cruisers, 15 battleships, and 1 command carrier. They are demanding our surrender. Tell them we are still thinking about it, Jinho replied with a grim smile. His crew laughed. Despite their fear, they all knew they were probably going to die today, but they would not go quietly on. The planet below, Civilian Administrator Minji was evacuating the last transport ships from Haven Colony. The spaceport was chaos as thousands of refugees tried to escape. Many of them were aliens who had come to human space seeking safety from other conflicts. A Nethros family approached her, their translucent bodies glowing with fear. The father spoke in broken human language. Please help our children. We have nowhere else to go. Minji helped them onto a transport ship, then turned to her aide. We need more ships. The evacuation is taking too long, but Administrator, we only have civilian vessels left. The military transports are all gone. Then we use whatever we have, she replied. Load the school buses, the garbage trucks, anything that can fly. Every life matters in space. Captain Jinho ordered his ships to spread out in a wide formation. The Valkyrie expected humans to fight like other species in tight organized groups, but humans had learned different lessons from their long history of warfare. Attack pattern Delta, he commanded. Use the asteroid field for cover hit and run tactics only. Do not try to trade shots with their big guns. The human ships darted between floating rocks using the asteroids as shields. They fired quick bursts, then disappeared before the enemy could target them effectively. The Valkyrie commanders were confused. Their massive ships too slow to catch the nimble human fighters. Admiral Yoon commanded the home fleet from her flagship high above Earth. She watched the battle reports come in from across human space. Every colony was under attack, but somehow their forces were holding. Her greatest weapon was not military technology, but information. Each victory or defeat was broadcast across the galaxy, showing other species how humans really fought. They did not conquer worlds, they protected them. They did not enslave prisoners, they treated them with dignity. A message came in from the Zephyrian Empire, their most important neutral ally. The Zephyrians valued honor above all else, and they had been watching human actions carefully. Admiral Yoon, the message began. We have observed your forces at the Battle of Kepler Station. Your soldiers gave medical aid to wounded Valkyrie officers, even while under fire. This is the behavior of true warriors. We are impressed. On Haven Colony, the Valkyrie ground forces had landed expecting easy victory. Instead, they found themselves fighting not just human Marines, but alien civilians who had taken up weapons to defend their new homeland. Elderly Valkyrie merchant who had lived on Haven for 10 years stood beside human defenders. His own people were attacking, but he could not abandon the friends who had welcomed him. The sight of Valkyrie fighting against Valkyrie shocked troops on both sides. Lieutenant Colonel Hajin led the famous Ghost Battalion on a dangerous mission deep behind enemy lines. Intelligence reports said the Valkyrie were holding captured diplomats on a prison ship. The hostages included representatives from several neutral species. The mission was nearly impossible. The prison ship was heavily guarded and surrounded by patrol craft, but the Ghost Battalion specialized in impossible missions. They had trained for years to rescue hostages and gather intelligence in enemy territory. Hajin and his team approached the prison ship using captured Valkyrie shuttles. Their disguises and false identification codes got them past the outer defenses. When guards challenged them, they spoke perfect Valkyrie language learned through months of preparation inside the prison ship. They found conditions worse than expected. The captured diplomats were being tortured for information about their government's military plans. Some were barely alive after weeks of abuse. Move fast and quiet, Hajin whispered to his team. The prisoners are in bad shape. We need medical support as soon as we get them out. War correspondent Yuna was broadcasting live from the front lines, her camera crew following human soldiers as they advanced through a damaged city. Her reports were being watched across the galaxy, showing the reality of the conflict. She filmed human medics treating wounded enemies with the same care they gave their own soldiers. She recorded human engineers rebuilding alien schools and hospitals destroyed in the fighting. She showed human families sharing their food with refugee children who spoke different languages. The footage was powerful because it was real. There were no staged scenes or propaganda, just humans doing what came naturally to them, helping others in need. Even species that had been neutral were beginning to take sides. The tide of war began to shift when the Zephyrian Empire announced their decision. Emperor Cax appeared before the Galactic Council, his golden armor shining under the chamber lights. We have watched this conflict carefully. He declared the Valkyrie fight for conquest and dominance, the humans fight to protect the innocent. We choose to stand with those who embody true warrior honor. Other species began making similar announcements. The peaceful Nethros offered to provide medical support. The technical Andromedans shared defensive technologies. Even some Valkyrie colonies declared independence from their warmongering. Government Captain Jinho was wounded when his ship took a direct hit from a Valkyrie battleship, but he refused to abandon his post. His crew worked frantically to keep their engines running while enemy fire pounded their shields. Sir, we have multiple hull breaches, his engineer reported. We cannot take much more of this then. We better finish this quickly. Junho replied, all ships concentrate fire on the command carrier. If we take out their flagship, the rest might retreat. The human fleet converged on the massive Valkyrie command ship, ignoring the defensive fire from escort vessels. It was a desperate gamble, but Jinho knew his ships were too damaged to retreat. The only way out was through on the ground. Lieutenant Colonel Hajin and his team were fighting their way back to their extraction point with the rescued diplomats. The alarm had been raised and Valkyrie security forces were converging on their position. Keep moving, he shouted as enemy fire filled the corridor. The landing zone is 2 minutes away. One of the rescued diplomats was too weak to walk, so Hajin carried him on his back. The alien was from a species that had been neutral in the war, but seeing humans risk their lives for strangers was changing his mind. The extraction shuttle arrived just as Valkyrie reinforcements surrounded the landing zone. Human pilots flew through heavy fire to reach the rescue team. Several crew members were hit, but they completed their mission. Admiral Yoon received reports from across the battle zone. Human forces were winning not because they had better weapons, but because they fought for something greater than conquest. They fought for the idea that all life was precious. A Valkyrie command carrier exploded in a brilliant flash of light, taking several escort ships with it. The remaining enemy fleet began to retreat, their formation broken and their morale shattered. On Haven Colony, the ground fighting ended when Valkyrie soldiers began surrendering in large numbers. Many of them had been shocked to see their own people fighting alongside humans against them. The idea of Valkyrie protecting aliens was something they had never imagined. As the immediate battle ended, Admiral Yoon knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy was watching every human action, judging whether they deserved to survive and prosper. Each victory brought them closer to acceptance, but also closer to even greater challenges. The rescued diplomats were already spreading word of their treatment by both sides. The contrast between Valkyrie cruelty and human kindness was stark. Several neutral governments that had been undecided were now leaning toward supporting humanity. War correspondent Yuna filed her final report from the battlefield, standing among human and alien medical teams working together to treat the wounded today. She said to her camera, the galaxy saw what humans really are, not conquerors or destroyers, but protectors of life itself. The question now is whether the rest of the galaxy is ready to accept this truth. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. The real fight was happening in council chambers and government buildings across the galaxy as species debated whether humans deserved a place among the stars. Dr. Hannah's hands shook as she read the final section of the ancient Terran archives. The truth was worse than she had imagined. The original humans had not been exiled for being too violent, they had been removed because their compassion was dangerous. To the Galactic Order the tablets told a horrifying story. The ancient Terrans had tried to save every species they encountered, even ones that attacked them. They had shared their technology, freely given medical aid to enemies, and refused to let anyone suffer if they could help it. This sounds like a good thing, Hannah whispered to herself in the empty research station. But then she read further. The Terran compassion had nearly destroyed them when they tried to save the Krolix from a plague. They accidentally spread the disease to 3 other worlds when they intervened in a war between ancient enemies. Both sides turned against them. When they shared advanced weapons technology with peaceful species, those species became targets for conquest. The galaxy had become chaos. The Terrans' good intentions had disrupted trade routes, broken ancient alliances, and started wars they never intended. Every act of kindness had consequences they could not predict. Every attempt to help had made things worse. Finally, the other species had met in secret. They decided the Terrans were too dangerous, not because of their evil, but because of their goodness. They forced them to leave the galaxy, promising death if they ever returned. On the diplomatic station orbiting the neutral world, Centauri diplomat Sora was meeting with representatives from dozens of species. The discovery of humanity Terran origins had split the galaxy into 3 factions: those who wanted to destroy humans, those who wanted to protect them, and those who wanted to isolate them completely. The isolationist faction was led by an ancient species called the Wisdom Keepers. They had lived through the original Terran exile and remembered the chaos that had followed humans. "Are the children of the Terrans," their ambassador said in a voice like grinding stone. "They carry the same dangerous instincts. Their compassion will destroy us all, just as it nearly did 3,000 years ago. But we are not our ancestors," Sora replied. "We have learned from history. We understand consequences better than the original Terrans did have." "You," the ambassador asked, "explain why your species has disrupted our galaxy in just 50 years. You have broken trade monopolies, ended profitable wars, and made enemies into friends. The old order that kept peace for millennia is crumbling because of your interference." The moderate faction was smaller but growing. They believed humans could be controlled and their compassion channeled in safe directions. The leader was a Zephyrian general who had fought alongside human forces. "Humans have power," the general admitted, "but power can be guided. We propose a system of oversight. Human colonies would be monitored. Human expansion would be limited. Their good intentions would be supervised." "That is not freedom," Sora said. "We cannot live in a cage, even a comfortable one." Commander Jiwan received an urgent message from Dr. Hana about the archive discoveries. The knowledge was devastating, but it also explained everything: the fear, the hatred, the desperate attempts to stop human expansion. She called an emergency meeting with her senior staff, Captain Minho, Admiral Kyung, Intelligence Officer Nari, and the others gathered in the secure briefing room, their faces grim as Jiwan shared the truth. "So, we are the descendants of galactic exiles," Minho said quietly. "No wonder they fear us. It's worse than that," Jiwan replied. "The galaxy believes our kindness is a weapon of mass destruction. Every time we help someone, every time we show mercy, they see it as proof that we will eventually destroy everything." "What do we do?" Nari asked. "We cannot change who we are. We cannot stop caring about others." "Maybe we can," Admiral Kyung said slowly. His words shocked everyone in the room. "Maybe we need to prove we can control our instincts. Maybe we need to show we can be trusted with power." Intelligence Officer Nari had been investigating the Shadow faction within the Valkyrie government. Her research revealed they were not acting alone. Ancient species that remembered the Terran exile were secretly funding and directing the war. The Shadow faction leader was a Valkyrie named Zex, but he was taking orders from the Wisdom Keepers. They had planned everything from the first border incidents to the refugee camp attacks. They wanted to provoke humans into revealing their true nature. Nari discovered their final plan during a risky infiltration mission. The Shadow faction was preparing to attack civilian targets on multiple worlds. They would use weapons that looked human but were actually alien technology. The goal was to make it appear that humans had committed genocide when the galaxy saw footage of human weapons destroying innocent populations. All support for humanity would collapse. The moderate factions would abandon The isolationists would demand imprisonment, and the warmongers would have justification for total annihilation. The plan was brilliant and evil. It would use humanity's greatest strength, their protective instincts, against them. When humans saw the fake attacks, they would rush to help the victims. This would put them at the scene of the crimes, making them look guilty. Captain Minho proposed a desperate solution to Commander Jiwon. They could expose the plot, but that would require revealing their intelligence sources and methods. The Shadow faction would simply try again with a different plan, or we could do something they would never expect. He said, we could surrender. The idea was insane. Surrender meant giving up everything humanity had worked for. It meant accepting whatever punishment the galaxy chose to impose. It might mean exile or imprisonment or worse, but it also meant something else. It would prove that humans could put others' welfare above their own survival. It would show the galaxy that human compassion was not selfish, but truly selfless. Jiwon spent long hours considering the option. The military situation was actually improving. Human forces were winning battles across the galaxy. Public opinion was shifting in their favor. They might actually win the war through conventional means, but winning the war might mean losing the peace if humans conquered their enemies through force. Other species would always fear and resent them. There would be endless rebellions and conflicts. The galaxy would never truly accept them. Admiral Kyung supported the surrender plan despite knowing it might cost him his career. We became soldiers to protect others, he said. If surrendering protects more lives than fighting, then that is what we must do. The decision was made in a secret meeting of the human leadership. They would reveal the Shadow faction plot, but they would also announce their willingness to surrender to prevent civilian casualties. It was a gamble that could save the galaxy or doom humanity forever. Sora was chosen to deliver the message to the Galactic Council. She would have one chance to explain humanity's position before the final vote on their fate. The speech she prepared was simple and direct, but it carried the weight of an entire species. Survival young engineer Tae learned about the surrender decision through his sister Rin, who worked in intelligence. He was angry at first. Why should we give up when we are winning the war? But Rin explained the deeper implications. If we win through conquest, we become what they fear most, a species that imposes its will through force. Our compassion would be seen as manipulation. Our help as control. The surrender would not be immediate. Human forces would continue fighting until the Galactic Council made its final decision, but they would focus on defense and protection rather than conquest. They would prove through actions that they were not the aggressive Terrans of ancient history. As news of the decision spread through human space, there were mixed reactions. Some people were angry, others were afraid, but most understood the reasoning. Their ancestors had been exiled for caring too much. The modern humans would show they had learned to care wisely. The galaxy watched and waited as the final act of the drama approached. Would humanity surrender, save them, or destroy them? Would the other species see wisdom or weakness in their decision? The answer would determine the future of every living being in the galaxy. Commander Jiwon looked out at the stars and wondered if they would still shine on human worlds in a year, or if her species would once again be wandering in exile. The choice had been made. Now they would live or die with the consequences. The Galactic Council chamber had never seen anything like this before. Instead of formal ambassadors and military leaders, the human delegation included teachers, doctors, engineers, and artists. Commander Jiwon stood at the center, but she was surrounded by ordinary people who represented the true heart of humanity. Admiral Yoon wore her dress uniform, but she carried no weapons. Her speech was prepared, but her words would come from the heart. She had spent 30 years in military service, but today she spoke as a mother and grandmother who wanted a better future for all children. The Wisdom Keeper ambassador stood to present the case against humanity. His ancient face showed no emotion as he activated a holographic display. The images showed the chaos that had followed Terran intervention 3,000 years ago. Behold, the legacy of human compassion, he said, pointing to scenes of warfare and destruction. The original Terrans destroyed the peace we had maintained for millennia. Their descendants will do the same if we allow them to continue. But before he could continue, something unexpected happened. A Valkyrie officer in damaged armor entered the chamber. He had been captured during the recent fighting, but instead of looking defeated, he seemed determined. I request permission to speak, he said loudly. My name is Commander Vex. I have served the Valkyrie Empire for 20 years, but I have learned something that changes everything. The council elder allowed him to approach. Vex activated his own recording device and played. Intercepted communications between the Shadow faction leaders. The messages revealed the entire conspiracy, including plans to use fake human weapons and terrorist attacks. The Shadow faction has betrayed not just humans, but all species. Vex declared they planned to frame humans for genocide to justify our war of extermination. Many Valkyrie officers died believing we were defending our people when we were actually serving the agenda of ancient powers. Who fear change? The revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. Several ambassadors began shouting in their native languages. Others demanded immediate investigation. Some called for the session to be suspended, but the Wisdom Keeper was not finished. He dismissed the conspiracy as irrelevant details that did not change the fundamental problem. Humans remain dangerous because of their nature, not their actions. Even if these specific crimes were not committed by humans, their pattern of behavior remains the same. He insisted they interfere in conflicts that do not concern them. They share technology without considering consequences. They treat enemies as friends and friends as family. This disrupts the natural order. Diplomat Sora stepped forward to respond, but before she could speak, another voice interrupted. An elderly Nethros floated into the chamber, his translucent body flickering with urgent light. I am Elder Shimmer, he announced. I was present during the original Terran exile. I am perhaps the only being in this room who remembers those times personally. The chamber fell silent. Elder Shimmer was legendary among his people, a being who had lived for over 4,000 years. His testimony would carry enormous weight. The Terrans were not exiled because their compassion was evil, he said slowly. They were exiled because we were afraid of change. The old powers wanted to maintain their control, and the Terrans threatened that control by showing there was a better way. He activated his own holographic display, showing ancient records that contradicted the official history. The chaos that followed Terran intervention had not been caused by their kindness, but by the violent reaction of those who profited from the old system. We told ourselves we were protecting the galaxy, he continued, but we were protecting our own privilege. The Terrans offered medicine to heal ancient wounds, and we chose to keep the wounds open because they served our purposes. Captain Junho entered the chamber with a medical team supporting him. His injuries from the recent battle were severe, but he insisted on being present for the final judgment. He carried with him recordings from the Battle of Kepler Station. These recordings show my crew risking their lives to rescue Valkyrie civilians from damaged ships, he said as the footage played. We could have left them to die and claimed victory instead. We endangered our own mission to save people who were shooting at us minutes earlier. The footage was powerful. Human soldiers carrying wounded enemies to safety, human medics working frantically to save alien lives, human engineers using their own escape pods to evacuate Valkyrie families from exploding ships. But the most shocking moment came when the Shadow faction made their final desperate move. A bioweapon was released in the ventilation system of the council chamber itself, targeting human DNA. Specifically, alarms blared throughout the station as the invisible death spread through the air. Human delegates began collapsing as the engineered virus attacked their nervous systems. Commander Jiwan fell to her knees, blood trickling from her nose. Emergency medical teams rushed into the chamber, but they were not prepared for this type of attack. The bioweapon was too sophisticated, too specifically designed for standard treatments to work. Then something unprecedented happened. Alien medical teams that had been trained by human doctors during the war began working together. A Zephyrian surgeon used techniques learned from human combat medics. A Nethros biochemist applied human research methods to analyze the virus working. Frantically, they began to understand the bioweapon structure, but as they developed treatments, they made a horrifying discovery. The virus was not designed to stop with humans. It would mutate and eventually target all organic life in the galaxy. The Shadow faction had not been trying to eliminate humans. They had been planning galactic genocide. Their hatred had driven them to create a weapon that would kill everyone, including themselves. This revelation united the Council as nothing else could. Species that had been debating humanity's fate now worked together desperately to prevent their own extinction. The bioweapon was advancing through its mutation cycle faster than anyone had predicted Dr. Hannah, who had joined the human delegation, transmitted her research about the ancient Terrans the original exile had not been about protecting the galaxy from Terran compassion, but about preventing them from exposing corruption and selfishness among the ruling powers young. Engineer Tay's sister Rin made the breakthrough that saved everyone. She discovered that human genetic diversity included natural resistance factors that could be used to create a universal vaccine. The very people the bioweapon was designed to kill carried the key to stopping it. Human blood samples were rushed to medical facilities across the galaxy even. As human delegates lay dying from the virus, their genetic material was being used to save the lives of those who had condemned them. The antidote worked, but the process was slow and difficult. Many beings from all species died before treatments could be prepared. The Shadow Faction plan had backfired completely, but at terrible cost as the immediate crisis passed attention. Return to the original question, what should be done about humanity, but now the context was completely different. Humans had not only been victims of the attack, they had provided the solution. The final vote was called, but it was no longer about whether humans were too dangerous to exist. It was about what role they should play in a galaxy that had nearly destroyed itself through fear and prejudice. Commander Ji-won, weakened by the virus but still alive, stood to address the council one last time. Her voice was quiet but clear, carrying across the silent chamber. "We did not choose to be the children of exiles," she said. "We did not choose to inherit a legacy of fear and misunderstanding, but we choose now to use whatever gifts we have to build something better. We choose to be bridges between species, barriers between worlds, and guardians of hope." The wisdom keeper who had led the opposition looked at the medical data showing how human genetics had saved his own species. His ancient prejudices crumbled in the face of undeniable evidence. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "perhaps we have been wrong. Perhaps the danger was never in their compassion, but in our refusal to accept it." Admiral Yoon, supported by her staff, delivered her prepared speech, but the words seemed unnecessary now. The galaxy had seen what humans truly were, not through speeches or propaganda, but through their actions in the face of extinction. The vote began, but before the results could be announced, Captain Junho fleet engaged the Shadow Faction forces above the station. The final battle of the war was being fought while the final judgment was being made. Human ships fought alongside vessels from every major species in the galaxy. The message was clear: humanity was no longer fighting alone. They had found their place not as conquerors or victims, but as partners in a shared future. When the enemy fleet was defeated and the voting was complete, the results were overwhelming. Humanity would not be exiled or imprisoned or destroyed. They would be welcomed as full members of the galactic community with all the rights and responsibilities that entail, but more than that, they would be asked to help heal the wounds that centuries of fear and prejudice had created. The galaxy had nearly destroyed itself and needed the very compassion it had once feared. As the session ended, beings from dozens of species approached the human delegation, offering friendship, cooperation, and hope. The age of isolation was over. The age of unity was beginning. 5 years after the Great Judgment, the galaxy looked completely different. Admiral Yoon stood on the bridge of the GSS Unity, the flagship of the new Terran Protection Corps. The crew around her included humans, Valkyrie, Nethros, Zephians, and dozens of other species, all working together. The ship was heading to Krolix Prime, where a civil war had been raging for months. The Krolix government had requested assistance from the Protection Corps, something that would have been unimaginable during the old Galactic Order. Captain Junho, now her second-in-command, reviewed the mission briefings. "We have peacekeeping forces from 15 different species," he reported, "medical teams, engineering units, and diplomatic specialists all ready to deploy." The Terran Protection Corps was not a human organization despite its name. It was commanded by humans, but every species contributed personnel and resources. The name honored the ancient Terrans while acknowledging that their descendants had learned to use compassion wisely. On the surface of former Valkyrie military worlds, reconstruction was proceeding faster than anyone had expected. The same species that had tried to destroy humanity now worked alongside human engineers to rebuild damaged cities. Former Shadow Faction worlds had requested human oversight for their transition to peaceful government. The irony was not lost on anyone. The people who had most feared human influence Now desperately wanted it, Commander Jiwan had left military service to become the first human galactic ambassador, her office on the neutral station. Harmony was always busy with delegations seeking help resolving conflicts. The old system of letting wars burn themselves out had been replaced with active intervention and mediation. Today she was meeting with representatives from two species that had been enemies for over 1,000 years. The Bitter Fleet and the Crystal Collective had agreed to peace talks for the first time in centuries. "We have tried negotiation before," said the Bitter Fleet Admiral, his scarred face showing centuries of hatred. "Nothing ever changes. They cannot be trusted." The Crystal Collective representative, a being of living mineral, replied with equal hostility. "They speak of trust while their ships patrol our borders. They want peace only when they are lost." Yuan had heard similar arguments from dozens of species. The patterns were always the same: ancient grievances, mutual mistrust, and cycles of revenge that seemed impossible to break. But she had learned techniques that worked. She did not try to resolve the past. Instead, she focused on building a future neither side could achieve alone. The Bitter Fleet needed rare minerals that only the Crystal Collective could provide. The Crystal Collective needed protection from space pirates that only the Bitter Fleet could offer. "What if we started with a small joint project?" she suggested. "Protection for one mining station, shared profits from mineral sales, no political agreements, no territorial changes, just business cooperation." Both sides were suspicious, but the economic benefits were too attractive to ignore. Within months, the joint project was so successful that both species requested expanded cooperation. The ancient enemies were becoming business partners. Dr. Hannah now directed the Galactic Heritage Foundation, an organization dedicated to preserving and sharing the history and culture of all species. Her work with the Terran archives had led to similar discoveries on dozens of worlds. Many species had forgotten their own origins, rewritten their histories to justify current prejudices. The Foundation work was revealing uncomfortable truths, but also hopeful ones. Species that believed they were natural enemies discovered they had common ancestors. The Foundation's most important project was the Great Library, a vast collection of knowledge from every known civilization. Nothing would be forbidden or censored. Even the darkest chapters of galactic history would be preserved and studied on Earth. Children from dozens of species attended integrated schools, learning together in ways their parents had never imagined. Young humans played alongside Valkyrie children, spoke multiple alien languages fluently, and considered the diversity completely normal. Tay had become the chief engineer for the Galactic Infrastructure Project, building faster-than-light communication networks that connected every inhabited world. Information that once took months to travel now moved instantly, breaking down the isolation that had fed fear and misunderstanding. His sister Rin led teams of xenobiologists